Jessii Vee, and in today's video we're going to be talking about very creepy ventriloquist stories. Now, I don't know about you guys, but ventriloquist dolls terrify me. And listen, normal creepy dolls scare me, but then ventriloquist dolls are on a whole different level. Something about a doll that has a moving mouth and actually speaks in a way, no thank you. So we're gonna be going back in history, talking about the very dark origins of ventriloquism, and then we're gonna talk about the creepiest ventriloquist dummies of all time. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be spooked. So if you guys don't know what ventriloquism is, here is the definition. It is when a person creates the illusion that his or her voice is coming from elsewhere, usually a puppeteered prop known as a dummy. They basically have the ability to throw their voice, which means their lips stay completely still as they talk, which tricks the viewer. It's actually very eerie to watch a puppet move around and speak while a person sits behind it staying still and not moving their mouth. So as a kid, whenever I watched movies about it or saw a show with a ventriloquist, I always thought the doll was actually alive. So let's get into the history, because these dolls and people have been around for hundreds of years, and it actually has a very dark backstory. Hundreds of years ago, people thought this was some sort of witchcraft. They believed that the people who did this were able to talk to the dead. People thought the voices coming from the dummies were actually spirits, so a lot of people called these men the men with two voices, or they thought they had spirits in their belly. So I had no idea that ventriloquism was actually seen as witchcraft hundreds of years ago, which I could sort of understand. I'm sure people really couldn't grasp the concept of someone actually not moving their mouth when they're speaking. It must have looked like magic. So it started off as something very dark that really scared people. But then in the 17th century in England, it began to be a form of entertainment. And most shows use these ventriloquist dummies for a form of comedy. So it went from terrifying to extremely funny. And there's many different stories about ventriloquists actually being very attached to their doll. Like, they literally treat it like a real kid. I've read stories about them tucking them in at night. And a lot of the horror movies out there are about ventriloquists losing their mind, thinking their puppet is actually real. Magicians were also a very popular form of entertainment back in that time, so the two took over stages around the world because of how fascinating they were. And I feel like ventriloquists were kind of like magicians in a way, because they made people believe that an inanimate object could come alive. So let's talk about the most famous ventriloquists that ever existed. Now, there's a very, very long list, so I'm only gonna mention a few of them. First, we have Bill Baird. He started puppeteering in 1934 and was known for his sidekick called Charlemagne the Lion. He actually did the lonely goat scene from The Sound of Music. And I don't know about you guys, but that's like my favorite scene from the movie. The next person is Edgar Bergen. He was the most famous ventriloquist of the 20th century. He had a doll that he took everywhere with him that he named Charlie McCarthy. He even started his own radio show called The Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy Show that ran for 20 years. Then we have Paul Winchell. He was a very popular ventriloquist in the 1950s and 1960s, but that wasn't the only thing he did. He was also a voice actor. He was the voice of Tigger on Winnie the Pooh. Then we have Jimmy Nelson. He was a ventriloquist who appeared on television in the 1950s and 1960s. He is most famous for commercials for Nestle's chocolate, featuring Farfel the dog. Then we have Fred Russell. He was an English ventriloquist. He was the first person to have a doll that was actually able to sit properly like a human. So those are just a few examples of very, very popular ventriloquists from history. So now let's talk about a creepy experience that someone actually had in real life with a ventriloquist dummy. And this happened like only a few years ago. There was a 48-year-old man named Michael Diamond who was known for collecting some very unusual objects. He collected shrunken heads, strange wax figures, Houdini's handcuffs, and so many other oddities. And usually he would have to actually purchase these strange objects from people, and it cost him a lot of money. But one day he he was given a vintage ventriloquist doll for free, which is a little bit odd because usually if you're given something so old that's free, you kind of think that something must be wrong with it, right? Well, this ventriloquist doll was named Mr. Fritz, and he was a doll dating back to the 1940s during World War II. And not much remains of Mr. Fritz. He's just a solitary head mounted on a piece of wooden paste stick, and his face is peeling and warped. And as dead as he obviously looks because he's just a doll, a lot of people say he's very alive. So Michael first started noticing something was wrong with Mr. Fritz when he put him on display in his showroom. He would lock up his case for the night, and when he came back in the morning, the case door would be wide open, which is weird because he'd lock it. How is it opening? Every night his case would be shut, and in the morning it would be open again. And things started to take a very weird turn very quickly. Mr. Fritz would sometimes have his eyes open when they were supposed to be closed. His mouth would also change positions very frequently. So one day Michael decided to set up a camera to try and catch this paranormal activity. And to his surprise, he actually did, and the video evidence is very chilling to watch. Literally, you can see like his eyes moving, the door of the case opening. It's really, really disturbing. So he finally decided to remove Mr. Fritz from his showroom because of what was happening. So he put it in a shed in his garden. He stayed there for 6 months, but his children reported hearing laughter from the shed as they played in the garden, and nobody would dare go near it. So he put it back in his showroom because Mr. Fritz was scaring his children, and that's where it remains to this day. I just found that story to be so creepy, especially with that video evidence. And if I was his kids, I would not be going near that. Alright, and to finish off this video, we're gonna be talking about the creepiest ventriloquist dolls in movies. First, we have a doll named Hugo, which was from a movie called Dead of Night, and that came out in 1945. It's about this ventriloquist doll named Hugo, and people are unsure whether the dummy is real or not. And throughout the movie, this doll is driving his owner crazy, and at the end, he is admitted to an insane asylum. So this doll literally makes his owner go insane. Next, we have a 1978 film called Magic. Anthony Hopkins plays a ventriloquist named Corky, who is slowly losing his mind. He believes his dummy named Fats is about to come alive and take over his act. So Corky ends up killing his manager and believes that the dummy has committed the crime. So all the terrible things he's doing, he thinks the doll is doing. So this is another example of the ventriloquist actually losing their mind. So he's committing crimes and thinking that his doll is actually doing it. And lastly, we have Slappy the dummy from Goosebumps. He's actually a very famous character from Goosebumps, and he's a dummy that comes alive when people say the words Keru Mary Odana Lama Monalu Kuranu. When you say those words out loud, he apparently comes to life. I'm scared now because I just said those words out loud. And basically those words translate to "you and I are one now." And this can be found on a sheet of paper in Slappy's dress jacket pocket. After coming to life, Slappy will try to make the person who brought him back to life serve him as a slave. And since his debut in 1993, Slappy has become the most popular villain and character in the Goosebumps franchise. So he appears in more movies and books in this franchise than any other character. Like literally, if you go on Google and type in Goosebumps and go to images, he's like all the images. And I definitely remember him, and he was in like all my nightmares. Anyways, so guys, those are all of the creepy ventriloquist stories I'm gonna be talking about today. If I missed any really good ones, definitely comment them down below. But I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!